Hello, welcome to my tutorial on how to land your aircraft in Flight Simulator. The first thing we're going to do before you even step foot in the simulator is identify the different types of runways and their markings. As you see, there's an image in front of you of three different runways. These are the three types of runways. The first runway, which is on the left, is a visual runway. It contains a center line, edge lines. It also includes the heading of the runway number, 17. 17 signifies 170 magnetic heading. That's also the right runway. So there are two runways. That's the right one. There'd be a left one on the other side. You also have your non-precision approach runway. Non-precision approaches, such as NDB approaches, VOR approaches, are used for this runway. They don't guide you down to the touchdown zone markers. Of course, if you can see, this runway has a little bit more in the way of markings than the visual runway. It has threshold markings. These are in groups of 4 on each side of the runway. These signify the beginning of the runway. It also includes touchdown zone markers. Touchdown zone markers, we'll get into those in just a few minutes. On the right, you have your precision approach runway for ILSs. ILSs will guide you down to the touchdown zone markers, and they will land you on the runway, depending on what type of capabilities your aircraft has. You can see there are a lot more markings on this runway than the non-precision approach runway. You have threshold markings, edge markings, your 17 left, that would be a heading of 170 degrees magnetic. You also have your touchdown zone markers. Touchdown zone markers are where you're supposed to begin your touchdown. This is the part of the runway you really want to put the wheels on. It starts here and it ends in it has 500-foot increments. So the touchdown zone markers are in 500-foot increments from the threshold markings. So after that, you would have your aiming point markings, which are 1,000 feet, also referred to as the 1,000-footers. And from there, you'll have more touchdown zone markings in 500-foot increments. Okay, let's get a little bit more in depth with these runway markings. To the left, you have yellow, what they call chevrons. Yellow chevrons are an area of the runway that's only to be used for taxi, takeoff, and overrun. So if you're coming from the other end of the runway and you can't stop, you can use this part of the runway to help you stop. You can also use it to taxi onto the runway and to take off, as I said before, but you cannot use it to land on, simply because the pavement here is not strong enough at most airports to sustain a landing from an aircraft, or a heavy aircraft for that matter. You also have your threshold markings. This signifies the beginning of the part of the runway you can land on. You have your runway designation markings. This is 04 right, a magnet heading of 040. Now, even though it says 4 right, there's no 0, but any number that's by itself, with no number behind or in front of it, this signifies that it is a single magnetic runway, meaning 04, which is 040 magnetic. This is also the right runway, and you have your touchdown zone markings. This is really the area of the runway you really want to start your landing at. You can land on this part of the runway, but you're not supposed to. You're really supposed to start your landing here. This is definitely the most ideal part of the runway to land on, because if you try and land at the threshold markings and you come in at a lower than normal angle, you can possibly hit a building, a tree, or any other hazard such as a tower by landing on this part of the runway. That is why they want you to land about 500 to 1,000 feet down the runway. You also have your runway center line. You really want to stay on your center line, because if you're in a big jet and you get off that center line, you could potentially be off the runway in a blink of an eye. Airport aiming point markings. Your aiming point markings are what you're looking at when you're coming in on final approach. This is the area of the runway you really want to try and land on this part of the runway. Now you can land near the touchdown zone markings, because this is the beginning of the touchdown zone. but the aiming point is where you're aiming to land your aircraft when you come in on final. Um, this is these are also referred to as the 1,000-footers, simply because they're 1,000 feet from the threshold markings, and the touchdown zone markings are 500 feet from the threshold markings. So you have these touchdown zone markings in 500 feet increments, and they're really the ideal position to land your aircraft. Also, you have your runway edges. You make sure you stay inside the edges at all times. And you have more 500-foot increment distance markers. Now, as you go down the runway, you can tell they get a little bit smaller each time. This is normal. It's supposed to be a sort of a funnel that, of a certain part of the runway that you're supposed to land on. And these can be anywhere from 2,000 feet down the runway to 3,000 feet. It depends on the size of the runway, how long it is, and that'll really help you out. Some of these markings, very crucial. You really need to know these markings if you want to land on runways. Alright, we are on final to 18 left in Charlotte Douglas. Today we're doing the ILS into 18 left. We have our nav frequency tuned. We have our course tuned to 183. Our lights are on, landing lights, strobes, beacons, nav, those are all on. And we are established on the ILS. As you can see, we're a little bit high according to the touchdown zone, the lights. And we're also a little fast, so we're at a little bit more of a descent angle. But that's okay. What we're going to do is we're going to lower our airspeed so that we don't have to be as much nose down. And there we go. Now we're on the glide slope. We want to also pull back just a little bit, just nice and gently, so that we don't go below the glide slope but don't land before the touchdown zone. There's your 1,000-footers. They're right in view, or your touchdown aiming point. There come your 1,500-footers and your 2,000-footers. Now you're going to flare at about 20 feet, pull up just gently on the nose, and make a beautiful touchdown. Also, reverse thrust, spoilers up, and manual or auto braking, your preference. At 60 knots, you're going to throttle idle. Keep your flaps and spoilers down until you're off the runway. And that is how you land on the inside view. Alright, as you can see, we're now on the outside view. This is what it would look like from the outside to give you a better perspective on what you're supposed to do when you land. As you can see, there's beautiful downtown Charlotte. We're going to go ahead and start the instant replay. Here we are. We're coming in a little bit at an angle. We got a little bit of speed with us today. We'll turn in a little bit. There we go. There's the runway. Here's us on final. Now, a situation like this when you're too high is you would lower your airspeed as we did in the previous video, and you'd lose a little bit of altitude because of that. Now we raise our nose to get back on that glide slope. There's your 500-footers going out of view. Here come your 1,000-footers. There they are. There's your 1,500-footers. And you're going to flare at about 20 feet. Bring a nice and easy touchdown. There's the spoilers, there's reverse thrust. You're also manually braking or auto braking, your preference. 60 knots, throttle's closed at idle, and you're going to manual brake until you can get off the runway. And that's how you land your aircraft in Flight Simulator.